Hello and welcome to episode 63 of the Brass Junkies. I am your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by my fellow co-host, Lance LaDuke. Lance, how are you doing this morning?
I have post-nasal drip.
What's
it? They don't really describe it that way anymore, do they? That was like when I was growing up, that's what they would call allergies. But then I'm wondering, was there pre-nasal drip as well?
Just
nasal drip? Post, pre, and current, and past nasal drip?
That's a good question. I don't know why I'm thinking about this right now. I shared I shared in the last intro. We batched these two that I got a new mixer thanks to the people from Patreon. And I just wanted to point out that I spent like an hour troubleshooting it because it wasn't working.
KitchenAid?
And it turned out that it was your fault that your equipment wasn't working.
I'm getting to be an older guy. We don't have to talk about that. It's just a family show.
Well, this went off the rails quickly. So, yeah, and suddenly Michael Martin has regretted every single friend and family member that he suggested to listen to this.
He should go by Eminem. I didn't think of that till now either.
I doubt that's the first time that he's heard that. So
I doubt it, but...
And he's a smart guy. He probably has listened to this before he shared it on social media. So... today's guest is a trumpet player from the Boston Symphony Orchestra, Michael Martin.
Man.
Yeah, he's got a few things going on.
Right?
He's like Mr. DCI, he's Mr. Symphony, he's a composer.
He's Mr. Bojangles. He's Mr. Mister.
He's got That's a good 80s band right there. I mean, not like Talking Heads good 80s band, but like a good pop 80s band. So, what do they have to do with Eminem? I have no idea. So, it was great getting to talk to Michael. He's just got so many irons in the fire, and he's got kids, and he's into CrossFit. He's does 9.
He's a blacksmith.
He does 9. Actually, yeah, the Holst movement from the military suite was written about Michael Martin. That's a little known fact.
Yeah.
So those offbeats that sink so many high school bands.
Holst is still dead, right?
He is super dead.
Wicked dead.
Yes, he is wicked dead, as we say up here in Boston. So. So we wanted to tell you. Oh, I have an announcement to make. I finally, I have a something called the Band Director's Guide, and I finally made a website for it. So if you go, If you go to banddirectorsguide.com, it's still a little bit of a work in progress, but so far, the next book I'm doing is going to be a Band Director's Guide to Everything Trumpet, and I will post it there as soon as it's available. But the tuba audiobook is now available on Audible. The trombone audiobook will be available a little later this summer, and both of those are available for Kindle or Nook or iBooks. So if you go there, and there's also a bunch of videos and stuff like that. So you can go to banddirectorsguide.com to check that out. Wanted to mention that there are a few ways that you can support the Brass Junkies. One of them is Patreon. Can you give us a quick Patreon spiel, Lance?
Go to Patreon and sign up for the Brass Junkies and give us your money, and we will be happy. Yeah, well, that's quick. That being said, you can donate. It's a per episode basis, and you can donate as little as $1 per episode. If you donate at higher levels, you can get free downloads and a variety of things. You also get access to such things as the fabulous collection of photography by none other than Andrew and myself. In our best trumpet poses. So we're creating new. In fact, we're going to create some new, fresh hot off the presses content for our Patreon patrons as soon as we're done recording this intro. So thank you very much to the current patrons. And if you're thinking about it, we'd love to have you join in the fun. It helps us offset the cost of putting on this show, and it helps Andrew do things like buy mixers.
This is
blenders
true.
Too? Just mixers.
The what?
Blenders too?
Oh, sure, blenders. Yeah, whatever appliances are looking a little a little worn. So, yeah, it would be great to have you. Our next goal is $75 per episode. We are about $10 short of that right now, and Lance and I are going to do an online concert for all of our patrons. That'll be a patron only thing, and then at $100 an episode, that's the real money. That's the real money reward, is that we are going to record an album of trumpet duets, and neither Lance nor I play the trumpet. We can do it very poorly, so that's yeah, we really can't stand trumpets or trumpet players, which is of course why we had Michael on the podcast. I love it when there's someone who is so insanely talented as Michael is, and so incredibly genuinely humble as he is. And it doesn't at all. It doesn't work with my my predetermined just truths about the world. So I talk to him, I enjoy it, and then afterwards I just completely ignore it as data, and then I just keep going and saying that they're all horrible. So, compartmental.
You should run for president.
Yeah. Anywho, run away. What you can there are so other than Patreon, you can share the podcast with a friend. You can also leave us a rating or review on iTunes. We've gotten a few new ratings and a few new reviews lately. We just got a new review that says Andrew and Lance sit down with leading players in today's brass world. Interviews are engaging and enlightening, dropping frequent gems of wisdom between the self-deprecating humor and behind-the-scenes anecdotes. They're even brave enough to allow several trumpet players a potential ego boost, flying in the face of propriety. This podcast is a serious time capsule of where brass playing is today, who the big names are, and how they do what they do. So yeah, I think that is. We've got two very quick sponsor announcements here, and then we're going to get right to the Boston Symphony Orchestra's Michael Martin. First is the wonderful people at Duquesne. Lance?
Duquesne University, the Mary Pappert School of Music, has a fantastic brass program. Really dedicated and nice people teaching brass instruments there, except me. So lots of cool opportunities there, fantastic bands, great program. Check out the more information about what's happening in terms of brass playing at Duquesne University by clicking through the link in the show notes. And thank you very much to Duquesne University, Jim Nova, for setting that up.
Yeah, name's still not ringing a bell.
He's the guy who did the Battlestar Galactica stuff.
I love I know. Yeah, the multi-track, all the flugelhorn stuff, right?
And the Lost in Space stuff.
The Flugelhorn Battlestar Galactica guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense. Finally, thank you to Parker Mouthpieces for providing our hosting. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine, customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and the tuber, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model tuba mouthpiece and the Lance LaDuke Model euphonium mouthpiece.
What?
Find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I love how he yells "what" every time and then cracks up, and each week he's cracking up more and more and more.
Well, I'm laughing at your reaction to it. Like, it's not that funny to me, except that you seem shocked that I do the same thing over and over again.
No,
and it's actually Land of the Lost. I said Lost in Space, but the Slee Stacks were from Land of the Lost. And we're going to be correct. And Jim did a great job of recording those tunes.
My favorite quote from any guest ever was Carol Yonch in episode, I think it was 11, who said something to the effect of, "My God, you guys can really drive a joke into the ground." and it was, yeah, we've based a podcast on it. So
I'd argue if I disagreed.
Yeah, I think that was exactly our take in the moment. So anyway, without further ado, here is our conversation with composer, trumpet player, and father extraordinaire Michael Martin. And today on the Brass Junkies, we are joined by a trumpet player, by a composer, and by a family man, Michael Martin. Michael, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing well. He was just sharing a story about how his daughter fell asleep in the car, and then he had to get her up, but then get her back asleep. And Lance was remembering, what was that, like 40 years ago when your kids were 2?
Something like that.
And I was remembering a whole year ago when my kid was 2. So
now they're concerned about me waking up from my naps or not.
Yeah, there you go. The circle of life. So, Michael, tell us what do you do with the Boston Symphony Orchestra?
So I'm a member of the trumpet section. My title is third/utility, which has less to do with getting items out of a broom closet and more to do with just kind of playing whatever part they ask. So I play mostly second and fourth during the BSO season. And if there's a piece with 3 trumpets, like Mahler 7 or Don Quixote or something like that, then I'll play third. But in pops, which we do about 10 weeks a year of, if there's big band stuff, I'm kind of good at that. So they throw all the super high screaming charts down to me. So it's cool. It's kind of it's kind of like the best / least stressful of every chair. So it's a sweet gig. I don't really ever have to play solos, but I get some pretty fun licks now and again. So
we interviewed Taga Larson, who I'm sure you know because the trumpet world's not that big, and he is I think he's 4th /utility, and he talked the exact same thing about how he gets to play like all of the parts at some point, and about how much he enjoys doing that.
Yeah, it's cool. It's basically the same chair. I just asked them to change my title to third so that I would outrank every other player in the same chair in a orchestra.
There we go. It only took 2 minutes for the trumpet player to come out in you. So, and you're one with social skills, and you're humble, and you're very personable, but you're still a trumpet player. I mean, there's only so much you can polish that up. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm the most humble person I know, I think, but it's tough to keep it all under one lid. But I'll try to for the duration of this interview at least.
Oh no, we would we've pretty much based this entire podcast on we interview famous brass players and we make fun of trumpet players. So that's kind of like that's our shtick. So yeah,
this is great.
You wouldn't have come on if you had heard the podcast first, but now you're here. So what are you going to do? So actually, that would probably be our most popular episode ever, Lance, is if we got a famous trumpet player who didn't like the fact that we were, and then just hung up on us, because we would finish the interview just talking between us. That would be that'd be good. So maybe we can stay.
This proof.
So when did you join the Boston Symphony?
I won the audition in February of 2010 and started in July at Tanglewood. So
what was
was kind of its own. It was kind of its own. I was excited to start at Tanglewood, start as soon as possible because I think the morning after the audition, I think I had $20 in my bank account. So I was like, yes, I'll come play Tanglewood. But
how about tomorrow?
I was like, that's the thing that will pay money. I'm going to do it. Within reason. But no, I got to Tanglewood and didn't realize that even though I'd been a fellow for 2 summers in 2006 and 2008 and seen the BSO play a ton of concerts, I didn't quite realize or remember that every week they do 3 different programs. So, and it's kind of just like wham bam through each of the rehearsals. You get like a pair of rehearsals for full programs. There's 6 rehearsals, 3 concerts every week. And all the rep is huge because it's all summer stuff. And we got audiences coming in from Boston and from New York and greater New England. And so they don't want to program small. So it was cool because I got to go through like the greatest hits of everything I'd ever wanted to play. But at the same time, I had to like learn how to learn rep really fast, So I think the opening night was my very first concert as a member of the orchestra was Mahler 2 with Tilson Thomas at Tanglewood. And then the very next weekend was like Brahms 2, Heldenleben, and I want to say like Beethoven 4 or something.
Wow.
So it was just a rude awakening, but I got to the end of that first summer and was just like wanted to sleep for a week. It was nuts, but
wow. So you
How did you learn to learn rep very fast? What was that? What did you learn?
Well, I've you know all of the pieces and you know all of the first trumpet parts, and that helps a little bit. But at the same time, like playing in a section and playing third B flat trumpet on Einhaldenleben is different than playing any of the stuff I had been practicing for like 7 years ever since I got into school. But as part of my studies at Northwestern with Charlie and Barbara, they value section playing there more than they value who the best principal player is. That's the most coveted award at school, is best section player. And so you kind of, even though we don't learn music at the same rate while you're in school, that kind of ownership and excitement of being a highly a highly contributing member of the section, kind of teaches you how to use your ears in the most sensitive way. And I'd say that was as much of the challenge as anything. Learning all of the notes and all that stuff is not a huge deal, just because it's so technically challenging in most of our rep that we can't just kind of read through it once and have it down. It was mostly just the biggest thing for me was going from practicing first trumpet excerpts all the time to playing in a section. Tom Rolfs, our principal, was the big thing he wanted me to work on in my playing my first year was just being able to warm this sound a lot. Going from that a little bit brighter, a little bit more brilliant first trumpet mentality to more supportive, and learning, honestly, the other challenge with as much rep as there was just trying to figure out the sound of the orchestra, the sound of the brass section, because it was a different thing than what I was used to, having grown up listening to the CSO and going to school in Chicago. It was, very much a new thing for me, dynamically, articulatively, and so it was not a struggle, but definitely there was a learning period there.
Okay. So do you mind kind of take us there? Like, you're in the rehearsals in the first few weeks, and what are you doing? Like, what are you listening for? How are you adapting? What are you adjusting? Like, specifically, what's the process?
Well, the dynamic of every trumpet section and then brass section and then orchestra is always different in terms of, slightly different in terms of like, how much do we watch? How much do we listen? My role is to kind of listen down to the left, because I'm usually sitting on the far right side of the section. And, of course, like Tom dictates what we're going to do with pitch and articulation and time a lot of the time. And that's for the trumpets and the entire brass section. So, but Tom is like he's so unbelievably solid and consistent. But he doesn't like a lot of movement. He doesn't want to feel like he has to conduct you with his bell or anything, which is great. It turns into a real kind of chamber music focus, even within the larger ensemble and a conductor on a stand. So getting used to that, getting used to being able to like feel what his cue was going to be without really getting a huge visual aid from him and his bell. That took some getting used to, but once you're used to it, it is quite comfortable. So, but like being able to, the biggest thing was like just trying not to get distracted by how great everything sounded all the time, especially like in the strings and the winds, like just these incredible, just virtuosos. Mm-hmm. Like every solo you would hear would just be like at the first rehearsal, perfect, just lights out, just beautiful and technically stainless. And so, and then then you see like over the course of when I played in Civic in Chicago, we would do 6 concerts a year and spend like 10 rehearsals on each concert, and the last 2 rehearsals would be with a guest conductor, so like Charles Dutoit or Myung-Won Chung conducted at one point, Ricardo Muti. So you see these guys for like a couple of rehearsals, and it's like every 3 months, every 2 months. And then getting to Tanglewood and seeing like Michael Tilson Thomas, like James Levine, Kurt Mazur, Charles Dutoit, all like in 3 days, you know. And then John Williams is just like out there walking on the lawn and just hanging out because he loves Tanglewood.
Yo-Yo Ma walks by.
Yo-Yo Ma walks by. His house is like right down the road. You know, It's like, so it's cool. It's like such a hallowed place for so many reasons, and has such a rich history. It can be really distracting when you're supposed to be sitting there like counting a 12-bar rest, which even though I'm a section player and play second all the time, like I am notoriously bad at counting rests. Like the two worst counters in the section are me and Rolfs, and Ben and Tom Siders make fun of both of us for it all the time. But it's really bad for me because like whenever Tom, Rolfs, and I are playing together, like we'll pair off weeks where Siders and Ben will play and Rolfs and I will play together. Tom and I just look at each other and we're like, what are we going to do? One of us knows how to count rests. So
ask Roy Lance. He always knows, I bet.
Roy Lance, I've joked for years that I wanted to develop a counting app, like an app you just put on your phone and tell you when to play. But I'm convinced Roy Lance actually has one because he never has his horn up, but he always makes every entrance and it sounds awesome. I don't know how he does. But my very first, so in terms of distractions and like making like a classic rookie mistake, like my very first rehearsal it was the second rehearsal because it was in the afternoon and it was like 95 degrees. It was just sweltering, so everyone was already sweaty. We were doing Mahler 2. The stage was crowded. We're all cramped in there, and Tilson Thomas is up there rehearsing, and we're doing something in the third movement, which is that slow waltz, and I was just like singing through it, like singing through some cues in my head, like that I saw in the string parts going by when we hadn't been playing in a while, and I was a little zoned out and just like singing it, and like, man, I get to play this piece with Mahler with the BSO.
Holy crap!
Incredible. Yeah, but Tilson Thomas is up there, and he asks like the front desks of string players. He starts singing literally the exact spot that I was just singing in my head, like he just joined at the same moment. And he just very quietly asked them up front. He was like, what rehearsal number is that? And he sang it, and I was at the same spot. And I was so zoned out that I just yelled out 20 from the back of the orchestra. And it was like day one, and like everyone in the brass section just like looked down and was like, what? So then they all started asking me for advice. Like they all started in a split second. They were like, Ross was like, hey Mike, do you think am I playing in tune? Am I too sharp? Toby was like Mike, do you know how many rests I have here? And I felt like I shrunk to the size of a pea, and I started sweating even more profusely. Wow. It was awful. It was so even now, whenever we get to like a rehearsal 20, or the conductor asks to start a rehearsal 20, 7 years later, everyone will still just turn around and be like, is that good for you, Mike? Rehearsal 20? Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
So
that reminds me of a much darker story that Roger Voisin once told me when I was studying at BUTI many years ago. That he was, what was he, like 16, I think, when he joined the BSO, and he was playing second to his father, who was playing principal. Mm-hmm. And there was something, I don't remember whether it might have been Kusevitsky who was conducting, and I think this was in Boston at Symphony Hall, but right at the beginning of his tenure, there was some percussion part that the percussionist messed up, and Kusevitsky stopped and made the orchestra do it again, and then it went wrong a second time, and Kusevitsky stopped and was getting really mad, and that Voisin just turned a little bit to look to see which percussionist it was. And that his father's way of telling his son that he was to never turn around to draw attention to a colleague who's struggling was that his father, with a closed fist, cold cocked him right across the chin in the middle of rehearsal. This was out of Roger's own mouth, and he said, and he kind of under his breath, but loud enough that everybody could hear it, said, "You will never turn around to look at a colleague in the middle of rehearsal again." And Roger said, and then Roger smiled with that little beret on. He was like almost 80 at this point. And he said, "I never turned around again." So at least Tom didn't punch you. I mean, I guess that could have. You're not exactly. It's not exactly your dad. So the analogy breaks down. But yeah, we were all like, "Holy crap, are you serious?" Like, yeah, he punched me.
I really actually hope Tom doesn't know that story. He probably does. I'm sure he's wanted to punch me at least 100.
Just tell him there's precedent. Yeah, and that the older voisin did not get fired. Just there's precedent there. Oh man. My the first concert that I ever attended as a human was 1975 Tanglewood on Parade. I was like 2 weeks old. So and my parents brought me there, and I think 1996 is the only summer, and that summer I was out in I stayed in Evanston. That was after my junior year at Northwestern, and I didn't get back until I think maybe the very end of August. I think that's the only summer since 1975 that I have not seen anywhere from 1 to 40 concerts at Tanglewood. So, yeah, it's a sacred place. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Good stuff. So, what is who's your favorite conductor that let's say other than your music director? Let's put that out there. Who is your favorite conductor that you've worked with?
So I would say I have two answers. One would be Bernard Haitink, and it's more of like it's more of a sentimental connection. I feel like that makes him one of my answers, and everyone I think feels that connection to him because he's so just like fatherly and gentle but brilliant. And like he's like some of his rehearsals are often like the shortest rehearsals we'll have, but he, for whatever reason, he just exudes this this intelligence and brevity in everything that he says that makes the rehearsal. I don't know. He never uses an unnecessary word, and it's always the perfect thing to say. But then he'll also, when he stops and has to say something, is pretty rare in itself, just because he's so clear with what he wants and his facial expression and his gestures and the way he conducts. So he was also the first. The first time I ever played as a sub with the Chicago Symphony, he was conducting. It was Mahler 6 on a tour to Europe of all things, and so that was like that was just obviously will be in my memory forever. But
sure.
But for a completely different reason, I would say Dutoit. Charles Dutoit is also one of my favorites because he's not always the clearest conductor. And I think anyone would tell you that. He's one of those conductors that you don't look for that kind of precision, but the concerts are still phenomenal and they're still tight and they're still locked in because he conveys the emotional intent of whatever the music is that we're playing, especially if it's French. He's so great with the French rep, that everyone just kind of knows stylistically what he wants to such a specified degree that it makes it super easy for us to play together. And those two especially, they're both so experienced and have conducted every major orchestra hundreds of times that when they come in to work with us, it's just like kind of falling off the log for them at this point. But we see a lot of really great talented young conductors that will feel like they have to talk their way through a rehearsal instead, and that's one thing we love about Anders is that his pacing and the way he communicates with the orchestra and the way he conducts in concerts and in rehearsals is so far beyond his years compared to what we're used to seeing. Those two and Dutoit too is just got like this air about him of just like he walks on the stage and he's just grinning and he just makes one-liners with guys like as he walks by and like in a concert, like walking on and off the stage, he'll just like stop and put his arm around someone and talk to them for like 30 seconds while the audience is applauding. And he's just like, I haven't talked to him in a while. I'm going to talk to him for a little bit.
That's awesome.
And the concerts never have with either of them, but in different ways, the concerts never feel predictable or routine. It's not like if you see us play Daphnis with Dutoit, it's going to be different than any other Daphnis you've seen us do, even with Dutoit. So that's what I love about both of them. And I feel fortunate to have, they're getting up there in years, and I feel fortunate to have been able to play many concerts with both of them.
Wow. So that tour with the Chicago Symphony, was your brother in the section at that time?
He was, yeah. He had just actually in 2000 and I think 7. It was in the spring of my senior year at Northwestern. He in the trumpet section in the CSO decided to host a sub audition, an official apply, and just basically like a normal. I think it was advertised in the union paper and all of that, and was totally blind. And so obviously there was 100 guys that showed up, and they revamped the sub list to about 9 or 10 great players, kind of from mostly from Chicago, but also a couple from New York. And Chris wanted to give kind of refresh the list and give some new younger players a shot at being able to do it. So so that was in the spring of 07 or 08, and then that following fall was that tour. So and the tour was nuts. It was the two big programs were Mahler 6 and Shostakovich 4. And playing the Mahler was great, just to hear Chris just nail it every single night and play in the same section as him was really good. My parents, my mom and dad, made the flight out to Amsterdam to watch the first 4 or 5 days of the tour. So
wow.
Because it was the first we ever played an orchestra together, which was a huge dream for them, obviously, and for us too. But then the coolest thing was just getting to having backstage access to every hall that we were in, so I could kind of just sneak around and watch the orchestra play Mahler Shostakovich 4, on the nights that I was off, which is just a lesson in itself every single time. So actually a really amazing story about my brother from that tour is our second night in London at the proms. The first night we did Mahler 6, and that was incredible. And I've got actually saved a screenshot that someone took of the TV broadcast that was going on, in London at the time. Someone turned the TV on and saw my face, and you could see down the section. It was me, Mark Ridenour, Tage Larson, Hagstrom, and Matt Lee was there too, I think. And then my brother, and it was cool. I'll have that forever. But we played Mahler 6 the first night, and the second night was Shostakovich 4, and Chris, he hadn't been feeling well all that day. We went and had lunch at one point, and he just wasn't feeling great. And it got to be about 30 minutes before concert time, and he was just laying down in the hallway backstage because he felt nauseous and was sweating, was running a fever, and everyone was like, "Are you okay? Mark was there, and do we need to call someone in to sub or to play fourth? Have Mark play first?" And he's like, "No, I think I'll be okay." And he played it, and it was just it was phenomenal. It was some of the best playing I've ever heard him do. And then we were walking back to the hotel right after the concert. He was "Stick around because I might need you to help me get back to the hotel." We got literally 100 feet outside of Albert Hall, and he just threw up 4 times into the bushes, and had I don't know if he'd eaten some bad food or just had a 24-hour stomach thing, but it was he had literally just played this unbelievable concert, felt like garbage the whole time, finished, and then just unloaded in the bushes after. And I was like, I told him while it was happening, because I don't take anything seriously. I was like, "Dude, I know you feel like garbage right now, but this is going to be one of those Bud stories, dude. This is awesome."
See, I saw him nail the crap out of Mahler 6 in Chicago, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, but he wasn't, I saw him afterwards. He wasn't sick. He wasn't puking. So I'm now not as impressed by the performance that I saw, because he looked healthy. So, yeah, there you go.
I almost puked outside of Royal Albert Hall. Very, very different.
I feel like most people have for totally different reasons. But.
Brass Band of Battle Creek went over and played in the Royal Albert. Oh God, I don't even know when this was. 97, maybe, whatever. For the they have the brass band championships in Royal Albert. All free game day.
You were just breaking up.
This was a legendary night. I'll just tell one part of the story.
Oh,
what did I do?
You were breaking up, but you're back. So go ahead.
So, they do the brass band championships, and it's an all-day thing. Starts first thing in the morning, and there's whatever, B level, C level bands, and then it just sort of keeps going. And then at the end of the day, they tabulate all the scores. and they have some sort of entertainment band, and the Brass Band of Battle Creek was that this particular year. And we'd gone over to rehearse and do some things the days leading up to it, and there was this pub across the street called the Queen's Mews, and it was always packed, and it took like a half an hour to even get into the place usually, but that was where everybody was. And so we, in anticipation of this, planned ahead. And so me and the Badger, Chris Matten, who was a dear, dear friend, and Patrick Sheridan decided, well, we better plan ahead. So we got done, and we went and found a package store, and we grew fond of Caffrey's, was the beer we were drinking. And so we bought them out of Caffrey's. We had 17 pint cans of Caffrey's, and it was kind of raining, so we were just we each had raincoats on. We had cans of Caffrey's in every pocket. Between the three of us, we were carrying 17 of these. We get to the Queen's Mews, anticipating that we're going to, hang out and have some beer before we go into the bar. And the place is empty. And so now they won't let us in. And it's pouring rain now. So there'd been a fight, and the cops came and cleared the place out. So now there's nobody at the pub, but we can't get in. So in the span of about 20 minutes, the three of us killed these Caffreys so that we could then go to the bar. Some other time I'll unpack that story. That evening has about 5 sections to it. We'll just tease that one. We'll release further parts of that story. Chris is not with us any longer, so I can start to tell more of that story, I suppose. With a clear conscience.
Oh, the poor Badger. All of his secrets are being exposed.
Badger. That's it. That was the night of the Eye of the Badger. That was the night of the Much Too Beer. That was the night of the missing T-shirt parts. That was a long night. Yeah, what a good one.
There you go. So, Michael, can you talk to us? We're going to have to keep this episode a little short for childcare purposes. What can you talk to us about how I was here? Let me interrupt myself 2 times in a row. Almost a year ago to the day, it was like a year ago last week, there was a Mallory Thompson, Dr. Mallory Thompson at Northwestern University, who her first year at Northwestern was my last year of undergrad, and she was the wind ensemble conductor for obviously your full tenure at Northwestern. She put together an alumni brass ensemble for the 20th anniversary of her coming to Northwestern. And that was one of the most, I've been spoiled, and that was one of the most fun and incredible concerts and just experiences of my career. It was really incredible, but I didn't realize before then that you were such a prolific composer to the point where the Wind Ensemble performed one of your, I think it was the world premiere of a piece of yours was the second half of the program. And it was incredible, and that's when I actually kind of started getting pissed off, because you're that good at the trumpet and you're that good at composing, and it seems like you're good at everything. So let's not unpack my jealous feelings, but can you tell us how you got into composition?
Yeah, well, I grew up, my father's a band director and my mother sings the Atlanta Symphony Chorus, so, my brother is, who he is, and the sister in between us she played flute through high school and college and was in color guard. So anyway, I've been a music nerd since I was, since I had my first memory, I could start walking. I was probably singing music before that. And, I grew up in very much a kind of drum corps marching band kind of household. So, my favorite thing to do in like 6th, 7th grade, like when I wasn't playing the trumpet or when I wasn't not doing my homework, since I never did homework, was, trying to like transcribe all of these like old, like these old Madison Scouts and Blue Devil shows, like on Finale 98, I think is what I was using, or Finale 97 or something. And I went from there to like when I started to get exposed to classical music like Mahler and Strauss and Copland and all, all of these just great heavy brass pieces with just these incredible chorales and lengthy lyrical solos and all these different instruments. I wanted to be able to recreate that myself, and the only way to do it, I didn't have scores lying around, was just to like
notate out the music, and then like take it to my friends and say like, hey, let's play this. I just did Star Wars, or I just did like this chorale for Mahler 2, or I want to see if I got it right, or so I just kind of started doing it because I wanted to be able to recreate it myself, or like with like a group of friends in the band or something. And and one of the cooler memories I have first really getting into it and knowing that it was something I really enjoyed doing was when I was a freshman in high school. I was my father was my band director. I was at the same school where he taught, and I had spent like 5 days trying to transcribe the opening minute of Star Wars, and like that main theme that everyone loves, and he let me pass it out to the band on Friday, like in the last 10 minutes of class, and we played through it a couple of times, and I got to hear something that I had obviously not composed, but had like arranged and orchestrated, and there were wrong notes here and there, and I was like frustrated and embarrassed, but also super excited. I was like, well, I got some of those things wrong, but I was like, oh, so much of the brass stuff was really good. And so it was basically, just like, for whatever reason, I've always had this desire of, if I see something that I really enjoy or I'm moved by, like I want to do it. And I whether it's like golf or playing or teaching or writing or CrossFit or whatever, like I want to just jump in head first and immerse myself completely in it until I'm good enough at it that I know I'll always enjoy doing it. And I think that's where composition kind of found itself as well. Was I wanted to be able to recreate any of these sounds that I was hearing that other composers had created, and I knew that it would eventually help me to create my own kind of language or my own sounds. And so it kind of began there, and then as I got older through high school, I went to Interlochen and took like a big band arranging class, and then I studied privately with one of the doctoral students at Northwestern while I was there, just to try to expose myself to music that made me uncomfortable, and then eventually studied orchestration at the University of Chicago, actually just for a semester with the doctoral program there that Cliff Colnut, who was the conductor of Civic Orchestra, was running. He invited me to kind of audit the class and participate in exchange for playing in the ensembles that perform these composers' music for free. I was like, absolutely, that's win-win. And this was all, kind of course, like tangentially happening alongside of playing in Civic and going to school at Northwestern and, having a girlfriend and, trying otherwise to just be like a normal college student. But, the more I started exploring this, the more opportunities I pursued with writing, like the more in love with it I fell, and just, I never tried to put it out there publicly that was something I did. It was always something that was very private to me and very personal. And, if there was a kind of an organic opportunity to offer something or arrange something or compose something for an event, I would say yes, of course. But, I didn't want to confuse the issue as of what I was trying to do, for myself as well. But, for anyone looking to hire me to play trumpet anywhere, I didn't want, I didn't want to exude any sense of, it was like, well, are you a trumpet player? Are you a composer? Like I want to hire you. So
sure.
It never really took off until a few years ago. I had really started to, I think, figure some things out in terms of technique of composing and kind of the fundamentals of writing music, which was something that had always been alien to me before I started to just really do an immense amount of score study. And the biggest kind of step forward for me in writing that symphony for Mallory, which was like 25 minutes long and extremely expansive in scope and all that. Something I never could have done like 5 years ago was I undertook like this ridiculous project for a VSO brass concert that we did at Tanglewood like 3 or 4 summers ago. And we were playing Daphnis one night at like an opening gala concert in the fall. And we just played the second suite, and we were just sitting there playing. I was listening, I think I played it with the orchestra like 25 times at that point. I was sitting there listening, and I just started to like wonder. I was like, what would this sound like for brass ensemble? Which is like the dumbest question I think anyone ever asked themselves. Like, I'm also, I'm a brass ranger for the Cavaliers, so like I constantly ask that question, like, would this sound good for brass ensemble or marching band? Which is, seriously, it's the worst question. It's like it's the like, should we test this atomic bomb of music? But I don't care. So I pitched it. I pitched it to Tom Ralston and Jamie Somerville, who were kind of like organizing the brass concert at Tanglewood the following summer, and they were like, well, can you make it good? I was like, I think so. I think it'll work.
Is it gonna suck?
Yeah, seriously, that's all. They were like, well, that's kind of a sacred piece around here. Like we can't do it. It was going to be bad. So there was that. There was the pressure of that, but then there was also like the excitement of being able to dig into a score that's so dense and it's so notey, every single bar. And that was like 6 months. 6 months of doing that was the most enlightening project that I've ever kind of undertaken, and is what I credit most of my growth in the last 2 years to, is because studying that score every day for like 2 or 3 hours. And this is before I had kids, obviously, for like 2 or 3 hours a day, and figuring out how to either recreate those sounds with a completely different set of instruments or create something new that still, conveyed the same effect.
Wow.
It blew my brain up and was put back together in this much more patient and pragmatic way. Whereas before I was so concerned with making sure every note that I ever wrote was exactly, was going to be perfect and amazing. And I'm looking through this score and I'm like, Ravel wasn't thinking that. Like he sat down at the piano and played the effect that he wanted, and then notated it as best he could. I would not have been able to write the symphony last year had I not undergone that just ridiculous, stupid project. So per everything else in my life, like I saw something that I was like, I want to hear that. I want to do that. And I dove in head first, and fortunately it worked out. So.
Wow. It was incredible. Yeah, it was great.
We got to get you back on because I want to hear more about. I got a student from Duquesne who's marching cavies this summer, but I want to talk more about your dad. I'm a huge fan of Freddie, and there's just so much to talk about. So we're gonna hit you up again because I want to hear more about the writing as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Could you super quickly talk about your relationship with Mallory Thompson and how that commission came about?
Yeah, I had reached out to Mallory like 3 or 4 years ago, just telling her I had this big idea in mind that I wanted to do for her. I wanted to write this piece, this symphony, and she emailed me back like the next morning and was like, this is so weird. I was just thinking about you, and I've got this 20th anniversary coming up in a couple of years, and I'd like you first to do. I wanted to ask you to write me a fanfare for the North Shore Concert Band, which is another ensemble that she conducts as the music director of. And she was like, but for my 20th at Northwestern, I was going to ask you to write something. So this works out perfectly. It was kind of just serendipitous. We both happened to be thinking about basically what ended up being the same project at the same time. So, but in my time at Northwestern, she was. She studied with Chickowitz and was a trumpet player, but is also just this unreal conductor. And even though it was wind ensemble, like I say this to everyone, I feel like in a lot of ways I learned how to play an orchestra from playing in her wind ensembles, because of just the standards that she set and the expectations that she had for all of us. and expected us to have of ourselves. But and the reps that she would program, and but also just her approach to every single day. Every rehearsal was, like, in a way, very old school Chicago. Like, if you don't show up prepared, like, I'm going, I'll probably kick you out of the rehearsal.
Right.
But no one, the reason she had this big following, and, Andrew, really like that concert we were at a year ago, the reason, like, everyone came back for, everyone, paid their own way out there, and they threw us, like, a couple $100 or whatever just for the hassle. No one went back there making any money. Like all of those 30 or 40 of us that went because of this, like, love and affection that we had for her, because you never doubted that she had the best interest of every player in her ensemble at heart. And that was true for me. It was true for you. It was true for everyone. So, and anytime I would ask her to go, I would ask her to listen to excerpts for an audition. Like, she'd be like, absolutely. Like, I'll put it in my calendar and we'll do it. And I must have done that 4 or 5 times before auditions. And, she definitely had to kind of, like, kick my ass a couple of times when I was younger, like sophomore, junior, playing in SWE. But you never doubted, like, her reasons behind anything. Her conviction for what she did and for how she treated us and what she expected of us, I think, is the reason so many players that have gone through her ensembles have gone on to be great teachers and great performers, and just, like, kind of giants in our world, in our universe and industry, because, of her effect on people. So it was, to be able to write the symphony, even though it was this kind of massive undertaking for me, in another sense, it was like, I felt like it was the least I could do because of all I felt like she had given me in my time at Northwestern. So.
Well, very well said. That's awesome. Yeah, I agree with Lance. We're volunteering your future time while we're not even done using your current time. But would love to hear some more about your dad. Is like a national treasure. He's like one of the nicest humans that has ever lived, and has had an incredible career. Yeah, my dream would be to have you, your brother, and your dad all on the podcast at one time. That would be that'd be incredible to hear. But I would also love to hear all about DCI and your experience with it. When you were in it, since there's kind of a lot of different avenues we can go. But my kid needs to be picked up from summer camp. So we've got time for one more thing, which is that I'm sure that you have heard about the chop problems that our dear friend and your trumpet colleague Jens Lindemann has been dealing with for quite some time now. So we're wondering if you might be able to offer Jens some advice in his time of need.
Well, I will say that I would probably, I'm going to think a little outside the box in my advice, because I don't really, from a physical playing standpoint, I've never experienced any kind of chop problem myself, so I can't offer advice from that context. The only thing I would say, knowing Jens as well as I do, knowing Jens as well as I do, and having him, dude, I would just say you need to be a little more discerning about the people you make out with at parties.
His wife will be happy to hear this one.
Yeah. I don't remember what his name was, but it was he had some jankiness going on on his face. So
I don't know how long. I don't know how long the intro is going to be, so I can't give Jen the timestamp now, but it's going to be around 48 minutes of the Michael Martin episode. Go check that out. Oh, that's really funny. Good stuff. Well, thank you so much for wrestling your kid back to sleep for us, and we had some connection issues in the middle that you graciously helped us or sat there while we dealt with it. So thank you so much for your time today, Michael. This has been really great.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll set up another time, and I'll try and wrangle Chris and Dad together too.
Yeah, and even just having you would be awesome. But yeah, having all three of you there, I think there'd be a dynamic there that we would all enjoy. So, hopefully you and I cross paths this summer at Tanglewood. I'm definitely going to be at some of your concerts. So,
yeah, for sure.
All right. Anything else, Lance?
No, I'll miss you both terribly.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. All right. Well, thank you, Michael, and thank you, Lance, as always, for being you. So, that is going to do it for another episode of the Brass Junkies. You've been listening to the Brass Junkies on the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network. If you would like to help support the podcast in order to make more episodes like this one possible, please visit pedalnotemedia.com/donate for more details. Also, be sure to check out our latest recording, The Brass Recording Project, at brassrecordingproject.com. The Brass Junkies is produced by Joey Santillo. Executive producers are Andrew Hitz and Lance LaDuke. This has been a presentation of the Pedal Note Media Podcast Network.